If you are looking for the front page of DeFi, look no further than Zerion.io. Zerion is your home base for managing your DeFi portfolios. Zerion offers a central place for you to engage with all of the DeFi protocols and assets that you engage with on a daily basis, but all in one central spot. Here you can see I've loaded up a wallet, and Zerion is giving me the portfolio performance of all the assets in this wallet over time, as well as a breakdown of all the assets that I own, as well as all of my transaction history that I've ever done in an easy to view fashion. Zerion also lets you invest right into DeFi's best yielding financial opportunities right from their homepage. Zerion also makes it super easy to access interest in DeFi using applications like Compound and Aave in the background. And you can also exchange your assets using the Zerion app using an exchange aggregator in the background to make sure that you always get the best rates. You can even use the Zerion mobile wallet to add your MetaMask or Argent or another Ethereum address right into your mobile wallet so you can see your portfolio and engage in DeFi on the go. Here I just loaded up my Argent wallet, and now I'm going to load up my MetaMask as well. And Zerion will do the same thing. It will add all of my assets and wallets together all in one space and give me a portfolio summary of what's going on. Adding wallets is trivially easy. If you already have a MetaMask, you can get it right into the Zerion app, and it can sync with your desktop app as well. And the best part is you can also buy Ether right into the app itself. Use the Invest tab to look at all the things that you have invested in, as well as other opportunities. And coming soon to the Zerion app is the ability to buy and sell your assets straight from your mobile device as well. So download the app. It works on iOS and Android. Go to Zerion.io, plug in your wallets, and get a historical report of your portfolio over time, as well as a comprehensive breakdown of all the assets that you own and how much yield they're generating for you. We're also brought to you by MONOLITH. MONOLITH is your cool new DeFi account, your DeFi savings account, your DeFi checking account. Except the cool thing about the MONOLITH DeFi account is that it gets software updates, right? You actually get to increase the usefulness of this over time. So here are some of the features. MONOLITH is a smart contract wallet with a lot of the features that you would expect if you've come to know DeFi and what it is. You can add money to it. You can put that money to work in Compound and accessing yield. But you can also swap through Uniswap. What was cool with MONOLITH is that they will send you a very sexy MONOLITH Visa card that connects to your MONOLITH smart contract wallet on Ethereum. So it's a really awesome tool to live a bankless life with a savings account that gets software updates. So this is something that you're never going to find out in the real world, but you can still do real world things with real money, like buy your groceries. So that's just fantastic. Coming soon to MONOLITH, actually already here to MONOLITH, is now you can buy DAI and get it sent to your wallet directly, right? So it's also being an on-ramp. So you don't have to go through your centralized exchange like Coinbase or Gemini or wherever. You can just go straight from your bank account right into your MONOLITH checking account smart contract wallet. So check them out at monolith.xyz. All right, Bankless Nation, I am here with John Powler and Joshua Lapidus of Opolis. Opolis is working to what John calls unbundle the employment experience. And to me, I'm hearing bells of self-sovereignty and empowering the individual. And so we're going to get into the topic of what Opolis is. John is also one of the leads behind organizing ETH Denver, which is like my favorite time of year. So before we even get started talking about Opolis, John, thank you for just making ETH Denver happen, because it's like my favorite thing. And I'm super bummed that COVID is throwing a wrench in those plans this year, but I'm looking forward to coming back to ETH Denver in the future.
Well, you're not going to miss too much, though. We are recreating all of it in VR this year. So 2021 will be, we're gamifying the whole thing in almost a video game environment. So it's actually quite fun. We've demoed the environment for several of our, the sponsor groups, and the reviews have been very positive. I mean, considering what I've experienced for the average event this year, which has been pretty much Zoom calls with maybe a background or two, we're planning something pretty special. So, and then also there might be a few in-person things depending on how much COVID cooperates, but we'll see. But you're welcome. We enjoy doing it. We enjoy it probably just as much as you do. So it's it's Ethereum Christmas, I guess you could say.
No, that's exactly right. And as I've also definitely attended some like VR conferences, just very quick, like one-off, like 1 hour presentations. There's definitely something like magical about doing something in VR. Like the immersion is really important, and it's not really something that you find on Zoom. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, cool. Well, we look forward to having you.
Cheers. All right, so let's get into Opolis. John, what is Opolis?
Well, Opolis is really the most, in my opinion, when you talk about the importance of Web3 projects and user adoption, Opolis is the killer app as it relates to the average person getting involved in Web3 technology and cryptocurrencies. So what it really is applying many Web3 tools around the notion of what we call self-sovereign employment. So as you said in your introduction, unbundling the typical relationship of a quote employee and a quote employer in the form of the person and the corporation, and actually building a framework, a legal framework that allows people to operate as self-sovereign workers, but do so completely compliantly. Essentially, at the end of it, what ends up happening is we're handing people control over their commercial lives. See, right now, whether you realize it or not, the minute you become beholden to a corporation, you no longer really control your decisions when it comes to your healthcare benefits, your retirement plans, like even where you put your time and attention during the day. Like you are completely captive to that corporation that excuse the expression, but they own you. I mean, it, in some ways it's, and I hope your audience doesn't mind me being a little bit avant-garde here about what I'm about to say, but this is, you know, we live in an age of modern day wage slavery. And it happens because, you know, everybody goes to college, you get all the debt, then you got to get a job so you can get out of debt, but then you never seem to get out of debt. So then you continue to have a job because the bills pile up, and there's no real freedom when it comes to that. And we work so that we can have 2 days on the weekend and basically maybe go on a vacation once in a while. And in days of COVID, no one's even doing that. So stepping back from the insanity, it's like, well, what are we really doing with our lives? Now, that by itself isn't bad. If it were that everybody was allocating their time and attention in a way that was expressing their best creativity, like the best of themselves, I would say, who cares, right? Like, because it's like, well, if they're fulfilled and feeling great about their lives and that's what they want to do, then so be it. That's the libertarian in me. But the problem is 70% of people are sitting in jobs they hate. So we're sitting in these employee-employee relationships. 88% of the workforce is doing that. And we don't like what we do.
Right.
So and how all this translates to like the human experience, human joy, and then just, you know, economically speaking, productivity, because if you think about gross domestic product and what drives GDP, it's in employee engagement, right? So it's in worker productivity. Do the math in your head, back of the napkin, like what's worker productivity look like if 70% of people are disengaged from their work?
Right. Uninspired.
Yeah, it's not their best, certainly. And then when you look at mental health in the United States, just as an example, like people are not that happy. I mean, you know, when you really get them candid and talking about their lives and what motivates them, they're not doing a lot of that. They're spending so much time just trying to survive. So what Opolis is aiming to do is really creating a new platform of self-sovereign employment. And we're doing so through an employment cooperative framework. So it's a legal framework combined with Web3 technology that allows for this new dynamic of work. So we're very much squarely in the future of work, but using legal and technological components to make that happen.
So let's hang on the conversation of how like big employer, if we can make like a big employer scapegoat. Why are we as a industry, as in a society, why are we locked in to big employer? Like what monopoly do they have that we can't seem to like break out of?
Well, right now, most of it's actually conditioning. I think a lot of it is, if you look at our educational system, I mean, I can speak for myself when I say that, you know, I went to high school and college expecting and being told and trained and conditioned to get a job, right? It wasn't about expressing my best creativity or becoming an entrepreneur and learning emotional, you know, tools or things to like weather the storm and, you know, how to overcome adversity. Like nobody taught me any of that stuff. Like it was very academic. It was very sort of cog in the wheel. Now, where did that come from? That comes from manufacturing techniques that basically it emerged in the Industrial Revolution. So if you look at the individual in 1908, 88% of people were self-employed. They were tradespeople. But in most business was done in communities, not in huge industrial centers. Well, that changed with the emergence of steel and auto workers and oil. So when you look at what happened, individuals started arbitraging their time with larger corporations like Standard Oil or, you know, US Steel because they could get paid more to do it. So it was no longer advantageous to stay on, you know, to stay on your own because you could make like multiples going and working for these large industrial complexes. Now, Henry Ford really is the father of the modern work, you know, the work week. You know, when you talk about the standardized work week, that came from Henry Ford and creating, quote, humane working conditions at his manufacturing plants in Detroit. Because if you look at the mortality rate in the steel industry, for example, at the turn of the century, you're talking about 10% mortality. You had 1 in 10 chance of dying at work if you worked in a steel mill. Well, it seemed like a pretty dang good deal to go work in a Henry Ford plant in the 20s and 30s compared to that. And then they started adding on things like healthcare insurance and retirement plans and pensions and time off paid. None of this was anything that anybody had ever thought of before. It started as perks, but then through the, I would call it the MBA era in the 60s, and even post-World War II, it became table stakes. People were, no longer was it just the elite companies offering this stuff. Pretty much everybody had to offer it in order to compete. But then when you wake up, everything's legislated around what is the norm. So like healthcare insurance and Fair Labor Standards Acts and like all these different things around, you know, these worker employer dynamics are now baked into statutes and laws, right? And it just, you know, when you talk about legislators and how they think, they don't think about innovation. They just think about solving a problem. And then so they just add more to it. Like if you look at AB5 in California, which requires companies to classify their workers as W-2 employees, you know, that's the wrong solution to the right problem. I mean, we've got inequity in our labor markets, but it's not because we're not treating them as employees. That's not the way to solve. For people who want freedom and flexibility, the way to solve that isn't to make them beholden to these companies, like
Right.
as the sort of, you know, wage slaves of them, because they have to have now W-2 them, which W-2 equals risk, which risk equals cost, and cost equals control. So
And also unemployment, right? So like the
yeah.
politicians are laying on like more and more responsibility to employers, and
Yeah, and they can't afford it. So
right,
what do they
and so
do?
they hire less, and
They hire less.
mm-hmm.
It's the same argument around, you know, minimum wage being raised to $15. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, these people obviously have never run a small business before, because if you
Mm-hmm.
do, you know, look, for a job that I can get done for $10, but I now have to pay 15, when I look at the overall cost, you know,
Right.
of my operations, I look at my OpEx, I got to come up with 50% cost now on my headcount. So what am I going to do? I'm either going to cut hours or
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to cut people because I
Right.
can't afford to do it. I mean, it's just, it's a very simplistic way of looking at it. And it's, again, it's the wrong solutions to the right problems.
Mm-hmm.
But what we haven't done is really create a framework that really empowers, in what I refer to as an egalitarian sense, the actual worker, the person. So how do we build better systems to actually allow them to work more fluidly and dynamically globally, not just constraining them to their state or city where they work, but why not open up like real labor markets globally? There's just too many roadblocks and legislative hurdles, and corporations don't want that. So they're never going to do it. So our theory is like, well, aren't they just really intermediaries anyway? Why not create a new dynamic? So what we've really done is shifted employment from a B to B game to a B to C game.
Okay, so yeah, let's go into that. What does that mean?
So when you talk about B2B and looking at employment outsourcing as an example, so what we're actually participating in is the cooperative, which is owned by its members, not dissimilar from a DAO, right? So this is really an employment DAO if you want to talk Web3 language. It just has a legal standing as an LCA, which is a limited cooperative association in the state of Colorado. But people from all over the world can be members to this. Okay, so it's not just that you can only be in Colorado. It's that it works. Right now, we're just domestic in the U.S. But in any case, when a payroll company approaches a corporation and says, "Hey, we want to provide services to you," it's a very procurement, CFO, CEO decision kind of thing. They in HR, they look at what benefits they're going to offer. They look at the cost. They look at, and it's a 6-month life cycle, and they compare against 6 places, and there's lots of dinners and beers and wine and all this, and who are they really making these decisions for?
Right, these are ultimately impacting the employers or the employees.
The employees are the ones who actually have to eat this sandwich once it's made, right? So the employees don't get a choice. Okay, so there's no voice of the employees in these decisions. It's really just a B2B game, right? It's a procurement game. In our world, what we're doing is we're actually shifting it to more of a consumer thing. Like, think about when you go shop for a mortgage or you shop for car insurance. Like, yeah, you don't love doing it, but once you get it, it's set it and forget it, right? But you know that you're covered. You've got that peace of mind. So the safety and security that you're looking for as an individual, you do what you need to do to get there, and then the rest is kind of taken care of for you. That's the same thing that we're moving employment to that game. So then when you elect your healthcare, even if you shift around from job to job to job, your healthcare never moves.
Right. Okay.
Because it stays with you.
You, the individual, is connected to healthcare, not you, not connected to the company.
Not to the company or the job or the gig or whatever it is that you happen to be doing. We call it the revenue stream. So it's not attached to the revenue stream anymore or the income stream. It's now attached to you. So it's portable. And we're saving people 30 to 50% on what you can get on the open exchanges. So we just had a person.
Is that because you are aggregating just many people together?
Group healthcare plan.
Right.
So if you look at the way the state exchanges are organized, they're actually underwriting one person. So you're paying a premium actually to get that insurance. Insurance companies don't like doing this, but they've been legislated into doing it. So they do it, but you're just paying a premium for it. Plus there's subsidies for certain people on the exchanges. So who do you think pays for the subsidies?
Right.
Other people in the network.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're providing Fortune 100 benefits. So if a Fortune 100 group has 1,000 employees or 10,000 employees, think about the purchasing power. Well, what if our cooperative has 10,000 employees?
Right.
Think
and also
about
the negotiating power, right?
Exactly. So the cooperative can now negotiate and procure services and insurances and benefits on behalf of its membership much more powerfully. Just like REI can go buy sleeping bags in bulk because they got so many people and they can offer really great prices on really great gear. The same is true. So benefits, payroll, shared services, and healthcare insurance all can be procured very inexpensively and provided to the membership. Whereas if you did this on your own, it's not only cobbling together a really clunky system, but it's very expensive and time consuming, and you have to be a freaking expert in everything. You have to learn how to shop for health insurance. You have to learn how to shop for liability insurance. And you have to learn how to shop for payroll, and you have to learn. Who knows how to do that? If you're a real estate broker or if you're a software developer, who wants to know how to do that?
So why does the idea of a union come to mind here? Like this feels like a union.
Well, sort of. Unions are typically geographic in nature and
Mm-hmm.
trade specific. So trade associations and unions are not a new concept, but they're very narrow in scope. And they also have very lacking benevolence capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So typically you have centralized leadership components, the unions, that become very corrupted. And if you look at how they behave, it's often like politicians where they just look out to protect their own bacon instead of actually looking out for the constituents that they serve. There's also these forced requirements a lot of times where if you want to paint in downtown Chicago, you have to be a part of a certain union or else you can't do it. So there's a little bit of a antiquated feel to an old school union. Now, the notion of collective bargaining is not a new deal, or even collective procurement is not a new deal. But if you take a step back, what we've really built is part union, part guild, part cooperative, and we put it up and we added a bunch of technology to maintain benevolence, and we wrote the bylaws in a way that would maintain benevolence, and then we're using Web3 technology to really empower the user, or excuse me, the member, I should say. The member is really the primary focus. So when the member wins, the cooperative wins.
Right.
So it's just, instead of, looking at the platform economy that we have right now where, Uber can be worth billions and billions and billions of dollars, but the average Uber driver makes less than minimum wage per hour. Like, there's a little bit of a misalignment there in value distribution. So the cooperative framework allows to solve that.
So let's go through some of the details about how, if I sign up to be a member of Opolis, what benefits do I get? I get access to healthcare, it sounds like.
Healthcare, retirement plans, workman's compensation, unemployment insurance. So typically as an independent, you can't get unemployment insurance. If you end up out of gigs and whatever, you can't apply for that. You can absolutely do that. Now that you're W-2 employing yourself.
What does that mean, W-2 employ myself?
Okay, so legally speaking, it is a legal relationship between an EIN number or a corporation that holds an EIN number who holds what's called employer of record. Now, as a W-2 employee, there's certain requirements that the quote employer must follow per legislation that give me protections as an employee. When let's say you have an S corporation. So in order to employ yourself, you have to be incorporated, either S corp or C corp. Now you can elect S corp status at the federal level and still have an LLC and still have a bona fide employment relationship between your entity and yourself. So for example, if I have an S corp and let's say it's called Pallor Inc. and I am the only employee, and I pay myself $60,000 a year, I am a bona fide employee legally of that entity. So when I W-2 employ myself, I'm going to get a W-2 at the end of the year, and Opolis generates all of that, right? So when you talk about the shared services, the administration, the accounting, the tax remittance, the tax withholdings, all the things that need to get done that would normally be done by the corporation I'm working for is being done for me through the cooperative. In addition to accessing all of the employer benefits, healthcare insurance, 401k, I can even do a match if I want. It's my own funds, right? It's just coming from my company. But I can still utilize, I'm basically recreating a mirror image of employment, but I'm simplifying it through a shared services stack and a technology stack that allows for all this to be vertically integrated.
Very cool.
So instead, yeah, it's very cool. So like working for another company, I just set it and forget it. And here's my salary, and here's what my withholdings are, and here's what my, all these different things are, and that's it.
So, but if I wanted to become a member of Opolis, this is something I have to pay into, or
it's $20 buys your share. So, and there's no, for right now, there's no fees for the first year.
And so what does that membership get me? Because it obviously doesn't get me revenue from my company because that's just not baked in, right? Like I have to
Yeah, you have at this point. I mean, well, let's put it this way. In the future, if we had say 50,000 people in the commons, which is what we call it, it's very likely that there's markets that pop up out of that, right? So employers will start coming to the commons looking for talent. So in the future, it's totally possible that you'll get work from your membership at the commons. Right now, we're not big enough for that. Futuristically, at scale, if you think about like job boards and other third-party markets for finding work, again, intermediaries, right? So I actually come from the talent acquisition space and the employment space. I've been in it for 20 years. And all these business models are flawed, like the third-party paywalls to try to find work and all that. The vision for Opolis at scale is actually becomes its own market. So inside of Opolis, the commons will be guilds, sort of like unions, but loosely affiliated and affiliated for a purpose. So guilds will be able to have their own advertising pages and charge for access. So instead of a third party getting all the advertising revenue or the access revenue or whatever, a guild would be able to get that. So again, at scale, that's where we're going to go. Now, I think you asked something about, other benefits.
Right. Yeah. So what are just all the incentives to become a member of Opolis?
Or the cost. Yeah. So, all right. So the major long-term incentive that we're actually launching in Q1 next year is a token rewards program. So typically, let's use Uber as an example because everybody understands it. If I were to be getting rewards for every ride that I took or every ride that I gave, and that represented a piece of value of the ecosystem, right? So like tokens were minted, say, every time I did a ride, or let's say every time a certain threshold of rides was hit, those that participated in creating that value for the ecosystem would be rewarded with these tokens, okay? That would have created a completely different mentality in riders and drivers. But see, we have this thing that I refer to as the tragedy of the boardroom. In our current epoch of capitalism, only the people that benefit are the stockholders, right? So at the time, most of it was just VC held. And then once they went public, get ready for the roller coaster. I mean, it's not a good thing. And then when you can put $10 million into Lyft and get $1.3 billion in an IPO when the average driver doesn't make minimum wage, it seems pretty skewed to me in where the value is going. I mean, it's pretty obvious that we've got a long-term misalignment where benevolence is not present and economic sustainability is not present. So the thing that we're doing is we're actually tokenizing the ecosystem such that when you are consuming payroll services from the commons as part of the group, once certain thresholds of growth are met, then a block of tokens is being minted and distributed to those that contributed to the value creation of that achievement. And every time a growth threshold is hit in the annualized payroll volume of the commons, which if it's, just in simple terms would be your payroll, my payroll, Josh's payroll, everybody, you add it all up and the total payroll volume of the commons then is what triggers these payroll mining blocks. So at scale, because we're all paying 1% of our payroll as a fee, at some point there's future profits. So the rights to future profits are represented by these patronage tokens. So as I hold these tokens and I can stake them and earn more as well. So I can sort of, stake and secure the network and really kind of, put my marker down instead of trying to sell them or hold them off network or something. I can put them back into the ecosystem in a staking contract and earn more. So it's kind of like what most people would think of like a savings account, but I can earn more tokens, which earn me more rights to more of the future profits.
So how does the token actually have a relationship with Opolis? Is it like an equity token or a claim on is it shares of the collective? Like what's that relationship like?
It's a utility token only. It's a patronage token. So all we're doing is using it for like a chit that basically says this token represents some fraction of future profits. So my membership is the security. So I buy one share for 20 bucks. That's the one. And technically it's a securities exempt transaction anyway, because it's a cooperative. Mm-hmm. So it's a share of stock. And you buy one share of stock, but then I can hold 1 million tokens and you can have 10, mm-hmm. right? Because let's say you don't utilize the ecosystem as much, but I referred like 1,000 people and I did all, so I created more value for the ecosystem, and my tokens represent my rights to those future profits, whereas your contribution was just smaller in nature.
Right.
Now we hold equal standing in terms of voting, which is the one share, one vote, except that my tokens, if I'm a member and I'm staking them, I also can earn enhanced voting privileges.
So it's like the proof of work token, whereas like if work was done, it's expressed in the ownership of the token.
That's right. And there will be profits to the ecosystem, and cooperatives are designed for shared profits.
Right. That's where I just connected those dots.
There you go. So the shared profits then come back to the consumers, right? So really in net effect, well, if you think about the way enterprise value is created, enterprise value is typically created by a multiplication of revenue or some, PE ratio or something that comes into play. A lot of times you'll look at just net revenue and it's like 20x or 30x and there's your market cap. Well, every time somebody runs a payroll, let's say it's $5,000, you could argue that there's a multiplication of that revenue that turns into value in the ecosystem. So the people holding the tokens are going to see this as like, well, gosh, the value of the network is going to continue to multiply. The more and more people that come in, the more revenue there's going to be, and there's actual value to holding these tokens, right? Like it's not just some, airware, vaporware, cutesy food meme thing. I mean, it's actually a real business model that, people are really consuming, and it's sticky too. Cause like, where am I going to go?
Right.
If I'm getting my healthcare and I'm getting rewarded for this, and ultimately I could even use these tokens to pay for my services, which makes the cost of the services ultimately free. Then where am I going to go? Why would I go anywhere?
Right.
I'm saving $400 a month on my healthcare. My administrative life is much simpler. I'm in compliance now, so I don't have to worry about any alphabet soup agencies coming after me for not paying my taxes on the DAI that I collected from my DAOs that I'm a part of. And it's just easy, and I'm sharing in the value of it long term, right? Yeah. So, and I have total optionality on how I want to organize it.
Maybe talk about how somebody because Gitcoin is trying to get the quadratic freelancer to be a thing, right? And like DAOs, you mentioned DAOs are trying to permissionlessly compensate people for their labor, and that's all great. Like, great, we're finding new innovative ways to like compensate people for their work, but that doesn't solve like their healthcare and employment services end of the spectrum, right? So like maybe talk about how Opolis kind of fits into like the decentralized world that we're trying to see come into fruition.
Yeah, so you heard me mention earlier on that it's the bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. So Web 3 is great in concept, but the problem is, in a lot of respects, like how on earth are you going to survive as a DAO that permissionlessly pays people value for their labor and no one's reporting that to any sort of tax agency? Like, how's that going to go down? Well, I'll tell you how it's going to go down. It's not going to go down. It's not going to go down very well. Let's put it that way. The main thing about state governments and federal governments, or any country's government, is they want their part of the tax. The reason why they have problem with cryptocurrencies generally isn't because cryptocurrencies are bad by nature. It's that crypto can be used to skirt paying taxes. That's what they care about. So what Opolis is doing is really professionalizing and normalizing cryptocurrency into a mainstream context. So we're just bridging to these quadratic employees and bridging to the DAOs. We're providing the framework that these folks need in order to survive and be compliant. So when, for example, Kevin and I at Gitcoin we're announcing a partnership between Opolis and Gitcoin here shortly.
Very cool.
And what they really traffic in is the actual commercial activity, right? The connections, the people doing work, the grants, the fundings, the movement of money. Well, when people are doing that,
if you want to live a bankless life, you need to get a hardware wallet. There is no alternative for storing your crypto in a self-sovereign fashion. That's why I have 4 ledgers that I use to manage my different crypto assets using the Ledger Live account as well. Ledger Live is like your home base for managing your Ethereum, DeFi, and crypto accounts. It does a really good job of aggregating all of your different Ethereum wallets if you are the type of person that uses more than one. But you can also add other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Cosmos or whatever your preferred blockchain is. And then it will display an aggregate portfolio of all your accounts at the main page. One thing that Ledger is doing a really good job of is enabling all of the money verbs that me and Ryan talk about with the Bankless Skill Cube enabled in the Ledger Live app. So right now in the Ledger Live app, you can buy, sell, lend, swap, and stake your crypto assets, which is doing a really good job of fulfilling all of the money verbs in the Bankless Skill Cube. Something that's new to Ledger Live is Ledger Swap, where you can swap assets one for another directly inside the Ledger Live application, ensuring trustlessness in your financial activity on Ethereum and on Bitcoin. If you want to learn more about what you can do with a ledger, go to the blog post, The Power of Ledger Live on the Ledger website, where they share some of the more advanced things that you can do with your ledger that you might not have known about. There's a link in the show notes that will take you to the Ledger shop where you can get your preferred Ledger hardware wallets. I personally like the Ledger Nano X, but I also have both. They're both great options. When you own a ledger, you own your own assets in the way that they have been designed to be held by the user and the user alone. So go get your ledger today to make sure that you are as self-sovereign as possible. The Bankless State of the Nations are brought to you by YEARN. YEARN is DeFi's first self-building community-run project, which I just get really, really excited about. YEARN is a system that seeks out yield in DeFi, and it does that in a number of different ways. A very aggressive way is with the vaults, where you can deposit your preferred asset of choice, and different DeFi experts will come in and generate a strategy for what to do with your deposited token, right? And so it'll go find ways to get yield in that deposited token in DeFi. For those who want to just earn yield on their stablecoins, the Earn system is for you, where you can deposit your preferred stablecoin and YEARN will go and figure out which money market on DeFi in DeFi is producing the best interest rate, whether it's DYDX, it's Compound, or Aave. It looks around DeFi to see where the yield is coming from, and it directs stablecoins automatically so you don't have to. Check them out at yearn.finance to get started, and also check out the stats page to see what other people are doing as well.
Movement of money. Well, when people are doing that, you still have to report this stuff, right? Like, I mean, you should. And at some point, someone's going to come around asking whether or not you did. Mm-hmm. And they'll be able to find whether or not you participated. Like, Gitcoin is not going to be able to hide any information from that. Like, they're going to be able to show that that happened. Well, if somebody has an Opolis membership and all of their, sources of revenue are flowing to that one ID, and it just, it could be 50 different DAOs I'm a part of, but it flows to one paycheck and it's being done compliantly. I'm paying my taxes, even though I'm taking crypto, I'm doing the reporting and I'm doing my basis statements. I'm doing everything that I need to do. What are they going to say to you? Mm-hmm. Nothing. Mm-hmm. And I get my healthcare and I get my compliance, all my administrative stuff. So we're professionalizing cryptocurrency and building that bridge between some of these very ambitious things, but providing the legal standing and compliance standing and the simplicity for the individual members to make it actually a reality.
So as we wrap up here, what else should we know about Opolis?
Well, we're open for business. So if you're looking for, if anybody watching this is looking for healthcare insurance, I'll say this again. The average member saves between 20 and 50% on their healthcare insurance, and the coverage is better. So our most expensive plan is typically 20 to 50% cheaper than what people are getting on the open markets. And this is pretty much nationally. California's one of the worst, but like we just talked to a person the other day that's literally going to save half. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they're actually getting paid, you could say, in some ways, to come to Opolis and become a member. And it's free for a year. So there's no community fees for 1 year, which are only 1% after that. So it's not expensive to be a part of it. It's not difficult to do. If you don't have an LLC or S Corp set up, we'll help you do all that. Like there's really nothing you have to do except bring yourself in a smile.
Very
So
cool. How many people do you guys insure?
We expect about 100 in the commons by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And then by the end of Q1, we're expecting about 500. So we're meeting with several people a day on their individual needs. And right now we're doing individual sessions as we learn about, what people's challenges are. And as we automate and sort of try to get to a place where it's entirely self-serve. People can join right now if they want. They can just go to commons.opolis.co. If they want to start the wizard, they can do that. But alternatively, just, go to opolis.co and set up a call and talk with us about, it's about 30 minutes, just give you a quick orientation, answer some questions, give you some best practices on how to get started. And then from there, it's completely self-serve. It's up to you on, how, when, and what you want to do.
Awesome. Well, John, I totally believe in like this whole big tent mentality that Ethereum is bringing to the world. And I see Opolis as one of these like new institutions that are arriving out of this Web3 world that are really a place where we can deposit our trust into, right? And that's kind of a theme on the Bankless show is like new institutions are arising in the moment that we need them the most. And so that's the niche that I see Opolis filling.
Absolutely. And just to comment on that really quickly, the thing about employment that is, I think, outside of us that are already in the Web3 space and already, trying to be compliant and trying to, maybe we're not, maybe we are, maybe we need insurance or whatever. I think the most important thing for this is it's estimated by 2028 that 90 million US workers will be classified as self-employed.
So the trend's going here already, huh?
The trend's already going there. Now, if you talk about this, really blockchains and cryptocurrencies are really just tools. They're just tools of self-sovereignty. By themselves, they're not really that special. It's what they represent in terms of liberty and giving the individual their own empowerment, okay? The thing about employment that I think is the most powerful case for why Opolis matters is because this is the path into this world for the average person. Right now, we don't have good user experience. We have private key management and all sorts of, challenging deals when it comes to getting the average next door neighbor to use Web3 and blockchain-based technologies, or even infrastructures, institutions, as you call them, right? But sovereignizing and creating this framework of self-sovereign employment, our members don't even know they're using crypto. And they don't have to elect crypto as part of their payroll. They can do everything in USD or fiat currency if they want, right? It's not a problem. And they can, look at, oh, what's that Ethereum thing? I heard about that, and they can start electing it later down the road. They have all sorts of optionality to start utilizing certain tool sets that they otherwise might not have thought to use. So when you talk about killer apps of adoption, like how do we get the next wave of adoption? My prediction is because the trends are already going there, as you mentioned, it's going to be through payroll and employment. Getting people to use payroll systems that are benevolent and really built on Web3 architectures, and then giving them optionality to choose things like cryptocurrency as part of their paycheck. That's the way it happens. It's not going to be social media. It's not going to be DeFi. It's going to be the thing that we all do, which might to some people seem really boring, but it's really the path in. Right. And then you can layer everything else on top of this. We can integrate DeFi protocols. We can lending mechanisms. We can put in decentralized identities and decentralized data storage and all sorts of other things that they don't even know, that they don't even need to know. It's under the hood.
Awesome. Well, this is really exciting. I'm really optimistic about Opolis playing out and growing into success. If people want to learn more about Opolis, where should they go?
Opolis.co. So opolis.co. No M on the end, of course, which is common in the crypto space. We don't have the .com, but Opolis.co is where you can go. You can also check out our YouTube channels and Twitter feeds. Like, we're on socials. We're at Opolis on Twitter. And yeah, that's probably the best place to get us.
Cheers. Well, thanks, John, for coming on and meeting the nation. And I would also be remiss to not mention that I have a decently pregnant sister. And so I just bought B is for Bufficorn for a stocking stuffer present that I'm giving her for Christmas. And so I just wanted to let you know that. If you guys need a Ethereum themed children's book, check out John's B is for Bufficorn book.
Yeah, you can find that at bufficorn.com. So.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us. Take care. Bye.